Okay, Hare Krishna. So today we're continuing the discussion of the 13 Upper Sampradayas that Bhaktivinoda Thakur often lists, and Srila Prabhupada follows in listing. So just to summarize, here we go. Just to summarize what was covered before, so we have 13, and they all sort of go together in vague groups. So the first two are the Smarta Brahman and the Jata Goshani. And these ones, they come together. They come together from the same sort of underlying fault. They are taking material qualifications and maybe some material opulences and equating them for spiritual qualifications. There's, of course, many pastimes which disprove this. We know especially there were some Brahmins who were blaspheming Narottam Das Thakur because he was a Kayastha, which was seen as they weren't in the Brahminical caste. And so there were these Brahmins who were trying to get political action against them, and they were passing through, and two disciples who we were talking on the day before yesterday about the different levels of Brahmins. There's the third class Brahmin who's Dvija, who follows the rules and regulations but has no knowledge. There's the second class Brahmin, which is the Vipra, who has some knowledge but does not realize the point of the knowledge. And then there's the Vaishnava Brahmin, who has realized the point of Brahminical culture. So this last type, so these were two devotees, two disciples of Narottam Das Thakur, who were Vaishnava Brahmins. They weren't Vipra or Dvija only. They were greater than that. And these two, they were very upset that these Brahmins were creating some political stir against Narottam Das Thakur and offending him. So it's a very well-known pastime. Their names were Ramchandra Kaviraj and Ganga Narayan, and they dressed up like Shudras, like very simple people. Even though they were from Brahminical families, they dressed up like Shudras, and they were in a marketplace. That these Brahmins who were causing issue with Narottam Das Thakur being a great acharya, even though he's not from Brahminical birth, so they were traveling through, and they decided to debate them in the guise of Shudras. So even though they seemed to be uneducated, of no special qualities, they decided to have a debate with these two Brahmins, and debating them, they completely defeated them. They had their Brahminical learning very much showed, even though externally they were having not much opulence. And this was shown, and they were asked, who are you? And they said, we're the disciples only of Narottam Das Thakur. So this was done to illustrate that the external trappings do not indicate realization. There's also the famous example of Ashtavakra, who is a rishi. And his name Ashtavakra was because in all the 8 places of articulation, he was so deformed and so malaligned by his birth. He had such a bad body that in all 8 places he was hindered in movement. And it said the amount of distance that a normal person would take a day to travel by foot, he would take a month to travel. He was completely debilitated by his bodily condition. And so one day he entered into the court of, I believe, Maharaj Janaka. And he entered into this court. And when he walked in, this was a kingdom that was very opulent and had some of the greatest teachers, some of the greatest minds. Everyone was there. Brahmins of all sorts of great qualifications, Gyanis, all sorts of people with very, very opulent, lots and lots of opulence, both materially and intellectually. And so as he entered into that place, the king saw him, and he began to laugh. And with a lot of laughter, all of the other men were laughing too. And they were laughing and laughing and laughing, seeing this low sort of person with such deformities, with no real opulence, entering into such a great and elevated place as this king's court, Seeing him walking in, they burst into laughter, and they mocked and mocked and mocked him. Until at one point, Ashtavakra himself, deformed as he was, began to laugh as well. And everyone in the court, their laughs started to stifle down a bit. They were a bit confused. Why is he also laughing? And at one point, they couldn't take it. Their curiosity was piqued. All of their laughter was gone. And the king inquired, and he said, "Why are you laughing? We're mocking you. Why are you laughing so much?" And Ashtavakra, he said, "I'm not laughing. Because of my deformities, you think I'm laughing, but I'm actually crying. I'm crying and crying." And so the king, he asks him, he says, "Well, you know, what has disturbed you so much? Clearly it's been our mockery." And he said, "No, I went and I traveled to all these different places because I wanted to find a place of proper wisdom, of proper learning. I wanted to find qualified Brahminical people who are of a high level of education and who could teach me the truth." And then again, there was a bit of the surprise, except instead of a surprise of laughter, of humor, of him coming in, there was a surprise at his words. And the king said, "Well, of course, you'll find them here. What do you mean you can't find them? What do you mean you're disappointed that you can't find people of learning? Anyone that you would ever want to find, any sort of knowledge, any sort of learning is present here in my court." And Ashtavakra, he spoke more, and he said, No, all that I'm seeing around here are not Brahmins, not Gyanis, no one of any knowledge, no one of any true, substantial ideas. Everyone here is merely a cobbler. And then again, there was some laughter, but it was more of a confused, uncomfortable laughter. Well, what does he mean, cobblers? We are all some of the greatest and most educated people in all of the world. How could he call us a cobbler? But Ashtavakra, he said, "You are all cobblers, don't seem so confused." Because just in the same way as the cobbler, he deals with leather to make shoes. His idea, his perception of the world is only as deep as the skin. It is only as deep as the animal skins which he uses to make shoes. In the same way, all of you here can perceive no deeper than the body that I am in and cannot understand what is of substantial purport. And therefore, with all of your knowledge, with all of your apparent understanding, you are all as only qualified to be cobblers, because that is the only job where one only needs to think so shallowly. And with this, the king and the whole court were humbled. They had some realization from this that the actual qualifications, the actual substantial thing of value is not the external body or the birth one takes, but the realization and knowledge. It is the more interior dimensions that qualify one. So with this, they are following under the same issue. This mindset of material criteria, of material fortune, of material opulence being somehow in any way contributing to spiritual achievement, this is what produces these upper sampradayas. Then we have next the Gora Nagaris, the Gora Nagari and the Ativadi. These two are similar as well. Both of these come from a pride, or rather an overconfidence in one's intellectual ability. The Gora Nagari, they take Krishna and they tell him how he should be worshipped, how he should be engaged with in devotional service. They tell Mahaprabhu, who is giving devotional service, who is giving it so fully, they're telling him this is the way it must be done. Again, because they are doing this rasabhas, they are trying to make Mahaprabhu the enjoyer and themselves the enjoyed. And so because of their intellectual pride, or rather their pride in the way they want things to be done, they assert themselves. Rather than seeing the absolute truth and submitting their minds to it, they take the absolute truth and try and have it submit to their minds. Of course, they cannot do the submission, and instead they throw away any spiritual progress they could have. However, this is engaging though with Krishna. So this is a lack of submission to Krishna, specifically in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Ativadis are similar, except they take this with parampara. So the knowledge, the absolute truth coming down through the parampara, they receive it, but then they say, no, I have some better idea. Again, there's the overconfidence in the intellectual ability, and so both of these. The Gora Nagari seeks to, with his intellect, with his own material conceptions, curtail and reject the instructions of Krishna, And the Ativadis, they are doing this, but they're doing this with the parampara itself, with the spiritual master and with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jagannath Das, he rejected what they said. He came up with his own ideas. He twisted it because he felt his ideas were better. And so he imposed, again, upon the perfect system that is received through parampara, he imposed his own conceptions. So that is where this one comes from. Then we began to discuss the Prakrita Sahajiyas. The Prakrita Sahajiyas, they are lumped in with the with all of the remaining 13 upper sampradayas except for the last two. So the remaining ones will all be influenced by the Prakrita Sahajiyas. And the Prakrita Sahajiyas, we were discussing, they conflate the masculine and feminine energies, aspects of the divine, and they'll say this is material. The Prakrita Sahajiyas, they were originally Buddhists. They were a Buddhist school that had some tantric ideas that one can experience nirvana through illicit relations. And so they had this idea that the male and female together is perfect, and therefore through illicit relations, through some mumbo-jumbo, one can experience nirvana. And then when they heard, of course, of the Radha Krishna conception, again, because they were not qualified to hear such things, they completely perverted it into their current understandings. Now, to continue on from then, there are two groups. I'll list them as one though, because they're virtually the same. There's the Sakhi Bheki, and there's the Churadhari. So they have a similar mindset problem with the Prakrita Sahajiyas, because their main problem is that they equate the transcendental bodies, the transcendental forms in the spiritual world with the material forms here. So the Sakhi Bheki is a transformation of the word vesh, or clothes, or dress. And so they will dress as Sakhis. They will dress as gopis. They will wear saris on, and they will pretend that I am so-and-so Manjari, I'm so-and-so gopi, and they'll run around dressing like that, and they will think, oh, Krishna will be attracted by this. Because of course that transcendental Krishna who's in the spiritual world enjoying all of these gopis in forms, in purely spiritual forms, somehow wants anything to do with their bodies composed of stool and mucus and everything else. So it's completely nonsense. The Churadhari is almost the same, but they're the opposite. The Chura refers to the peacock feather crown that Krishna wears. And so they will dress like Krishna, and they will say, we will get Radharani. It's the exact same idea, but reversed, and just as stupid. So these people, they will think their material body somehow is attractive to Krishna, again, because they are under this basis of this sahajiya tendency, this sahajiya idea, that my material body, me being materially like this is the spiritual thing that is appealing to Krishna. It is not, of course, that the material body is useless in sadhana, but we know there's a distinction given in Caitanya Caritamrita. There's internal and external elements to spirituality. There is the sadhana done in the sadhak deha, and then there is these internal things done in the siddha deha. But one is eternal, and one is of a spiritual body, and in that form, which is again given by the spiritual master very later on in spiritual life, in that form, one will meditate on these things, but it is not this gross form here. This gross form here should be followed in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami and all the other previous acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, who never did anything like this. They constantly wore the normal clothes. Again, because it's a conflation of these ideas. It's an idea that, okay, I will dress as the gopis. It is pleasing for Krishna to see the gopis, therefore it is pleasing to him. If Lakshmi herself is not allowed into the Ras Lila with her transcendental body, why will a body composed of, again, stool and mucus and saliva and all these other things, why will that body be allowed into the Ras Lila? If even Lakshmi's transcendental body is not allowed, then again. But this is another silly idea. But they are having this. Then the next group, these are a group of 4. They are all listed together openly. There's the owls. The owls, the Bauls, the Shanis, and the Daravesh. These are all 4 levels of one actual spiritual, quote-unquote spiritual path. These are all successive in their development. So even though they're listed as separate upper sampradayas, they can be considered maybe different orders of one general upper sampradaya. They're, again, very strongly influenced by the Prakrita Sahajiyas. Their ideas are very much built on this idea, on their ideas. They will, this idea, they say that Vaikuntha, Goloka, they're all present in our body. And any truth that is not present in our material body does not exist. That is one of their basic ideas, speculations. And so each one of these levels is a different level in their path. So the Aul, there's some debate over what this name means, but most people will say it comes from a Persian word meaning very important person. The word Baul comes from the Sanskrit word Vatula, which means mad or deranged. In traditionally, it's used in the context of referring to divine madness, like in the way that the great devotees go mad. So they will think they're going tasting this, so they name themselves after that. The word Shani is actually a development, a corruption of the word Swami. That's where they get this name from. A famous Shani is Sai Baba. The Sai Baba of Shirdi, he is a Shani, the one who's very, very common. You will see him everywhere. Bhakti Vikas Swami often says that the definition of a Hindu in this day and age means you've got a photo of Sai Baba somewhere in your house. So, Sai Baba of Shirdi, he belonged to this group. Not the new one with the curly hair, the other one. And then the Daravesh is the highest level. These are like the gurus for the other ones. So these ones, and this word, it's a Sufi term, because all of these people, they're what we're called syncretists. They were doing a big khichdi of all of the local religions at the time. The Bauls, they'll wear Rudraksha around their neck, they'll have Vaishnav tilak on their forehead, they'll have Tulsi Mala on their neck, and then they'll wear the robes of a Sufi Muslim. So it's all just a big stir-fry of traditions. And so Daravesh is a Sufi term, which means one who begs from door to door. And they are the ones who are guiding all of the other ones. So this is a general progression. They begin with the Auls. The Auls are married. Yeah, they're they're married, but their whole idea is very tantric. Suhotra Swami has written a really nice book describing them, but when he would describe the practices of all these various groups, but when coming to describe the practices of the Auls, he said it is better left unwritten. They're very, very revolting, their practices are, very illicit in every sense. There's no regulative principle that can be said that's broken, and they don't just break it within their own families, but they'll go off and they'll mix families together, and they will do all these tantric practices, and they will do like this. The Bauls are the next level, and the Bauls are somewhat famous. They're given a lot of esteem in Bengali culture. Rabindranath Tagore, who's a famous Bengali poet, was very much enthralled by them. And because of this, Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually wrote a few poems pretending to be a Baul. And because they have a very unique style of literary poems. Their poems are very specific, and they're very well accepted within Bengali culture. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to help curtail, to defeat them in their own field, he pretended to be a Baul, not literally, but just as a pen name, and he wrote poems in their style and completely refuted their whole philosophy. So the idea was, at one point, Bauls were singing the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, refuting their own philosophy. And that was the whole idea. So the Bauls, yeah. And they're very, very prominent. In fact, some Bauls were even invited overseas to represent their own ideas. So Bauls are very prominent, and they're sort of traveling mendicants. They're sort of like bards. They travel around with musical instruments, and they'll sing songs, and they're very obtuse songs. Like they don't really make sense. The whole idea is it's that classic sort of Mayavadi trick that if it doesn't make sense, it must be true, because it sounds impressive if it doesn't make sense. Radhika Raman Prabhu always says the appeal of these sort of things is everyone thinks they're so intelligent. They think if I hear something that doesn't make sense, then it must be a very sophisticated thing. Because if I can't understand it, then it must be coming from a very high intellectual platform. But actually, it's just a little absurd. So the Shanis then, they are considered the next level. And they don't have any rules that they really follow. Not that the Bauls are following many rules to begin with, but they are not following anything. They don't have to travel and sing songs or anything. They're not doing any of this. They're just acting as renounced people. They'll go sit somewhere. Maybe they'll go talk somewhere. Who knows what they'll do? They have no fixed, set way of things. And then lastly are the Daravesh. The Daravesh, there's no real description for them. They just do whatever they want. They're considered realized, so with their many like mistresses or whatever, they'll just exist somewhere, and no matter what they say, the other ones will follow. So they will follow the teaching of these Daravesh. So this is another type, and these ones, they're very, they have this idea called Jayante Mar. So that is what they believe is the goal. Jayante means while living, while people are living, and Mar means death. So they say, they believe the Mahabhav of Mahaprabhu wasn't actually some beautiful ecstasy. They say it was just some moment of Mayavad non-existence. So essentially these people, they just mix whatever they can get their hands on, as is exemplified by the dress of the Baul. They'll wear clothes like a Shiva worshipper, then they'll also wear clothes like a Vishnu worshipper, then they'll wear clothes like a Muslim. Whatever really they can, without any discrimination, they'll take whatever current. Whatever current of information comes their way, and they have no real regard for any rules and regulations. Again, most of these ideas come from the Prakrita Sahajiyas, most of their more revolting ideas. These ones are unique in that these are the only ones who will not claim to be Vaishnavas. They will not claim to be Vaishnavas at all. Instead, they will claim to be following Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Very confusing how they pull that off, but they will say, we are not Vaishnavas, but we are following the spirit of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So occasionally they will try to quote Shastras, but not to much avail, because of course it's very unfounded and very mixed up. So these people, they, in many ways, they embody a lot of the mistakes of the Prakrita Sahajiyas, with the extra element of they're not very careful with where they take their information from, and they sort of have this idea, they feel like they're essence seekers. We are following the essence of Mahaprabhu. We are following the essence of the Sufi path. But without a proper discipline, one who is discriminating on their own what the essence is, without any actual proper guidance, will just find sense gratification instead. And that's all they've done. Because again, material minds that have not submitted to the parampara and to the shastras, they will only find excuses to do what the material mind does best, which is to, again, gratify the senses. So that's these ones. And there's two more left. And the other two, I will wipe the board. The other two that are left, they are often lumped in as bowls, but they're actually not. The last one, because they have died out over time, so there's very few of them. And the second one, just because they seem to move in similar circles. The last one as well, because they also engage in the similar tantric stuff. So the next group are the Karta Bhaja. The Karta Bhaja, they are the Karta Bhaja are interesting. Their founder, Al Chandan, he they say he's the second coming of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So with all of the if you were to compile a book of all the Shastric evidence they have for that, you wouldn't have a book because they don't have any Shastric evidence for it. It's just some nonsense. They're just going around saying he's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, whatever. But they're often lumped in with the Bauls. They don't do any of the weird illicit sexual things that the Bauls and Auls and all the other ones do, but they're somewhat similar. But their big thing, their big claim to infamy is they believe that the Guru is God. Not even that the Guru is representing God, not even that the Guru is the ambassador of God, but that the Guru is God. And in fact, no one else is God. They will have this idea that when you say the name of Krishna, you should only say the name of Krishna because that is actually the Guru's name. They do not believe in worshipping a murti or anything. They'll say all of this is false. Only the Guru is to be worshipped, is their main idea. Again, how they can say their founder is the second coming of Mahaprabhu when he so much contradicts Mahaprabhu is up to I'm not sure how they do it. But his name, Al Chandan. So he appeared, again, around the area of Bengal, and he had many followers. Yeah, he was saying many different things, and these ones, they're a little stricter than the other previous ones. They have some nice rules and regulations. So they have the very strict idea that one should only engage in marital relations with their wife. So one should be chaste only to their wife. So again, they're setting a very high standard. Then their next rule is that one should be vegetarian. This is very nice. Except one should only be vegetarian on a Friday. Every other day meat eating is fine, but Fridays it's not on anymore. Fridays it's been called off. Again, they're syncretists, so Friday takes a specifically high position in Islam, so therefore they say Friday is a sacred day, we shouldn't eat meat then. So the sad fact is that this is rather strict. This is rather strict in comparison to their other, their surrounding upper sampradayas. But so at least they've got that going for them. So they have this idea. And actually, a rather interesting story of how their founder, Al Chandan, was decided to be Mahaprabhu. Because he was, of course, experiencing, well, obviously not, but he was claiming to experience all these great emotions of transcendental love. And therefore, he would say to go in these moments of madness. And he would go into a room of one of his disciples who was sheltering him at the time. And staying in the room, he would stare at the wall and just not do anything. And it was said he was experiencing great ecstasy. And so he did like this for a long while, and his disciple was very happy. He thought, I'm taking care of my guru, this is all well and good, this is very nice for me. Until the disciple, his daughter got married. And so they had a beautiful wedding. We all know Indian weddings are big affairs. And they had the big, wonderful wedding. And during that wedding, the Al Chandan, he burst out of his room naked and started dancing during the wedding procession. And his disciple was very angry. And he said, what are you doing? This is my daughter's wedding. Can you please, don't mess this up. I put so much time, so much effort into arranging this. Why are you dancing around naked? And Al Chandan became very, very angry. And he said, if you say like this, I will leave your house. And at that moment, his disciple, he had a moment of realization. And he thought, what am I doing? Clearly, this behavior means he's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And from there, they believe that he is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because again, this is apparently the qualification, the criteria by which one can be ascertained to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can quote so many shastras from Chaitanya Upanishad, from Bhagavatam, from all sorts of places showing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the personality of Godhead, but apparently this is also an equal standard by their idea. So this group sort of died out for a while, but it had a small resurgence by another guru in their line who again said, I'm God. And their whole idea, so they're around in the Bangladesh, Bengal area, and they have this idea that you should only worship their guru. Even before it was worship your guru is God, but at this point now it's only that guru is God, and no one else is God. So it's a little absurd, but this group illustrates two tendencies taken again to an extreme. One is a complete dismissal of Shastra. These ideas can only come up if one just completely ignores the Shastric evidence on everything. In fact, they won't even read Shastra too much. They will only listen to their Guru because, again, Guru is all that matters. Guru is God. And an unshastric emphasis on Guru. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Caitanya Caritamrita that the spiritual master, his words are to always be based on Shastra. And of the three, Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, Shastra is the center. The Guru is, of course, a representative of Krishna, and it's not that a disciple should assess his words and criticize and try to think. But to a certain extent, if his words are completely going off, at one point the Shastra should guide one to see if the spiritual master is properly illustrating them. Of course, that doesn't mean, again, that one can then correct their Guru and say, well, actually, in Bhagavad Gita it says this or this or this. It doesn't mean that. But to a certain degree, Shastra must stay the central pramana. And if that is removed, then you might end up here. And if there is, again, an overemphasis on the Guru, an unshastric emphasis on the Guru, then we will find these sort of things. Not that the Guru can be overemphasized if it's done shastrically. Sometimes it's said that Guru Bhakti is an element of Krishna Bhakti, is a subcategory of Krishna Bhakti, but other times it's actually said that Krishna Bhakti is a sub-element of Guru Bhakti, because one does all their worship for Krishna under the guidance and instruction of the spiritual master. So, both of these are there. So, because of this, it is not that the spiritual master can ever be over-worshipped or over-emphasized. However, he can be overemphasized incorrectly. And again, Shastra helps to guide one to properly understand that. So that is what they embody. And then the last ones are the Nera Neris. The Nera Neris are virtually non-existent. They were a thing when Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote his list, but they're not really a thing anymore. The Nera Neris, this means Nera means a man with a shaved head, and then Neri means a woman with a shaved head. It means the shaved head people. And they stemmed, like the Prakrita Sahajiyas, they stemmed from Bengali Tantric Buddhists. Their ideas are slightly different. We don't know much about them, again, because they died out, thankfully. But we don't know much about their philosophy. But we know that to some degree they were engaging in illicit things similar to the Prakrita Sahajiyas. And these people, they were more and more, however, they didn't practice the tantric thing so much. Some of them went back to it, but essentially the undergirding idea was there was a Vaishnava, I've forgotten his name now, who was preaching mainly to the Buddhists. And he brought in thousands and thousands of male and female Buddhists into the path of orthodox, bona fide Gauriya Vaishnavism. What he preached to them was fully legitimate, and they were practicing it very nicely. But slowly, because of their previous samskaras, they weren't so easily able to abandon their Buddhist pasts. And so they began to be very syncretic. It was a very hybrid religion. In the same way that the Auls and the Bauls took everything, but mainly Sufi ideas, and mainly Vaishnava ideas, Vaishnava ideas through the filter of the Prakrita Sahajiyas. In the same way that they sort of merged these two together, these people, they merged Buddhist ideas in. And so one of their most famous members was a one-time devotee named Achyutyananda Das. And Achyutyananda Das, he had come to the path of Vaishnavism, and he was very nicely practicing it. But at times he got a little uncomfortable. Still some Buddhist ideas he still had, and so he would, in the middle of the night or so, he would go and he would speak to his old Buddhist guru. And his old Buddhist guru, he would say, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm associating these Vaishnavas." And that Buddhist guru said, No, Jana Sangaha. This is bad association. And he said, "You must leave the devotees." And so Achyutyananda, he left. But he still now had some samskar of devotion. And so he came up with this hybrid idea. And his followers, which again have died out, they have this idea that they have a prayer, they say in Sanskrit. It's like their own mantra. And they say, "I serve the lotus feet of Lord Buddha in the form of Sri Chaitanya." Again, it's just some concoction built on previous samskars, on some sentimentalism. I feel sweet and wholesome when I remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I feel sweet and wholesome when I remember Buddha. So I'm going to come up with this philosophy. So there's some sort of syncretic group. And again, they have this name because they shave their head like Buddhists. So this group here, yeah, they are representing this. They're a syncretism. And what they tend to embody is the inability to let go of certain previous samskars. Even if it isn't necessarily previous religious samskars, they still show that people sometimes are not willing to abandon the things which are not compatible with Vaishnavism. In one degree, that is fine. But on the other hand, it is not that one should view the Vaishnavism through the lens of a previous philosophy, or that one should merge the two together. We know Srila Prabhupada, he was so respectful and as is proper, as are we all, for the Christians and the Muslims when they are following Jesus and Muhammad. And Srila Prabhupada, he would speak very sweetly about Jesus and Muhammad. But he would also be clear that it is not that that means suddenly we will start reading the Bible or the Quran and base our philosophy off of that. But some people might have some samskar, some syncretic ability. I still remember once I was on one forum, I was asking a question. It was a devotee forum. It was obviously in Port Macquarie. I had to go online to ask devotees questions. And this other devotee asked a question. We were talking about our Mahaprabhu Lila. I wasn't sure whether Rai Ramananda was Arjuna or anyways. So I was asking these questions. And one other devotee, he asked later on, he said, what was the Swarup in Gaur Lila of Jesus Christ? And it was a very confusing question because obviously, I mean, who knows? Of course, Jesus Christ is very worshipable, but again, that's that strong desire to try and incorporate all these things before, and therefore, who knows? There was a lot of speculation that was going on, and if that speculation goes too far, you end up having ideas like this. That idea itself, that question itself may have been innocent, but then I remember some people were saying, oh, well, Jesus is Brahma, and Brahma is Haridas Thakur, and then they were concocting all these ideas just in that one forum, so simply, because of, again, that strong attachment. That's no disrespect to Jesus, that's no disrespect to Muhammad, but it is not that we should merge in all of these previous samskars. Also today, we see many different examples, maybe not necessarily religious ideologies, but people may be involved in all sorts of different social movements and political movements. Srila Prabhupada, even though he was there at the time of the hippies with all sorts of strong ideas, he never at once tried to incorporate their ideas in. Maybe he would try to reach to them, but he wouldn't try to incorporate it. Once Srila Prabhupada was asked to speak at a vegetarian event, and Srila Prabhupada said, is it fine if I speak about Krishna? And they said, oh, they want you to mainly speak about vegetarianism. And then Srila Prabhupada, the staunch vegetarian, said, well, no, you know, we are preaching about Krishna. We are not preaching about vegetarianism. Even though, of course, vegetarianism is a wonderful preaching method, but still the essence of our sum and substance should be found in that. And so some people might join through that, and they will keep these strong ideologies they had before, and they will reinterpret Vaishnavism in all sorts of ways. And then again, the syncretic mission is complete. Just an interesting note, I mentioned hippies. The Dharavesh, who I was mentioning before, the highest level of the Bauls, Srila Prabhupada, and this word appears in CC, and Srila Prabhupada in his word for word translates it as hippie. So, so it shows the Vaishnava perspective on these upper sampradayas. So that is the 13 upper sampradayas. It's all interesting to see. There it is. It's all interesting to see them. These are the various groups that Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself felt in particular were important to single out. This list is old. It is, again, as Srila Prabhupada says, whenever he mentions this list, he says Bhaktivinoda Thakur has listed these upper sampradayas. Today, maybe some of these aren't present anymore, but a lot of their sentiments are still present. A lot of their ideas which undergird them still are present. And furthermore, there's new upper sampradayas. Which is the unfortunate fact that new tendencies, as the times go on, new bogus tendencies, new bogus ideas develop, and so new upper sampradayas have developed continuously. But at the root cause of it all, even though there was different mentalities undergirding them all, the basic and most elemental mistake that they've all made is they did not surrender properly to the Guru Parampara, to Sadhu, Shastra and Guru. If they had done all of this and done it properly with humility, then all of these mistakes could have been avoided. So even though many Apasampradayas will arise, still they can be curtailed as long as we remain chaste to Srila Prabhupada and the Guru Parampara. And this is the focal theme now to end this chapter of Caitanya Caritamrita. At the end, Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he begins to pay respects to the parampara that he has received Caitanya Caritamrita through. He speaks about how the storehouse of Sarup Damodar Goswami, who's explained them to Raghunath Das Goswami, who has repeated them to me. He gives this chain, this parampara. Parampara means, one after the other. This is the link, the parampara, through which Caitanya Caritamrita has been passing through. And we hear something interesting. In 85 to 86, Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he says, if one says that Caitanya Caritamrita is full of Sanskrit verses and therefore is not understandable by a common man, I replied that what I've described are the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that for me to satisfy everyone is not possible. And then he gives another interesting point. Apparently, he was saying, if people will complain that this text is too hard to study, then they should realize that people are studying Bhagavatam all the time, and that is composed purely of Sanskrit. This Caitanya Caritamrita is in Bengali, and where I've quoted Sanskrit, I've explained it in the Bengali. So he says there's no excuse, it's so simple. People will have similar excuses for not reading Prabhupada's books. Oh, it's too difficult. But people are reading so many things every day. People are constantly reading newspapers, they're reading all these novels. Prabhupada's books, maybe some of the language is unique, but they're very simple to understand. All of this is an excuse. Prabhupada's books are too dry, Prabhupada's books are too boring. This is, again, Krishna, in the same way that Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he is dealing with the excuses of his time and showing that they're nonsense. In the same way, there's so many excuses now. People want to avoid Prabhupada's books. And they'll come up with all sorts of things, like we are reading here. They're too difficult, it's too hard, I can't understand this. But actually, Prabhupada's books are given in such simple English. Really, it's not that hard to delve into. And maybe someone might say English is their second language. Prabhupada was had so much emphasis that his books should be translated into every language. Really, there's no real excuse. So, in the same way that Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he is telling people people are coming up with so many ideas why they shouldn't read my books. In the same way, people are having so many ideas why they shouldn't read Prabhupada's books. But in the same way that they were just excuses back then, they're just excuses now. And there's another interesting point before we conclude that if once here, it's said, Prabhupada says that on commenting on Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, saying it is not possible to satisfy everyone. Because people will sometimes they will feel embarrassed sometimes, or they will sometimes say that this element of our philosophy should be changed in order to preach. And in order to preach, that is fine. But it is not that the whole message should be removed. Again, Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he is writing this book to preach the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he's making the point that I cannot please everyone. It is not that it is, of course, elements can be stressed and other elements minimized in order to make the philosophy more appealing. But sometimes people will say that the Shastras, they're out of touch with the modern day here. Srila Prabhupada, he is speaking what was only appropriate in a Bengali context so many years ago. But this is not the mood of Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, and it is not the mood of our Shastras. It is not to be curtailed to the standards of modern society, whatever modern society wants. Because what it wants today is not what it wanted 50 years ago. And what it wants today will not be what it wants in 50 years from now. Constantly it is shifting. And if we reinterpret and reorient the essential Siddhanta and philosophy in order to be appealing and to be spoken in the qualities and values of the modern time or of the current society, then there will be no substantial value to it. Everyone here has heard of the Salvation Army, yes? Does anyone know what the Salvation Army is? What do people normally say? When somebody says, I'm going to the Salvation Army, what do you think of? You think of free food, and you think of somewhere to put your clothes. What people don't know is the Salvation Army was one of the strongest churches in Britain. Only a few hundred years ago, the Salvation Army went on the streets and it picked up alcoholics and told them that to focus on God, to give up their bad qualities, to focus on a spiritual life, to do all of these things. It had a great mission. But because it constantly, to do what is appealing to society, adjusted and adjusted and adjusted and adjusted, now all it is a place where I send my old clothes. That is the only value. That is what people think of with the Salvation Army. Its purpose is drifted because it was constantly engaged in this compromise and compromise and compromise with society's values. And that is where it ends up, because again, it's the shifting sands of a material world. But this is coming from a spiritual platform, and therefore should not be modified according to them. When I come back on Sunday, we'll do the last text of chapter 2. And then we'll get into the sweet pastimes in chapter 3, the Sannyas Lila of Mahaprabhu, and so on and so forth. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Thakur ki jai. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namo Vishnu Krishna Vishnu.